welcome to another episode of Cloud Talk Live. I'm Jeff DeVerter for Rackspace Technology. That's right, everyone. Welcome back to another Tuesday. I'm Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist for us here at Rackspace Technology. Now, as you know, the same old rules apply. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell me who you are. Tell me where you are in the comments. I'm not sure if you're watching on the YouTube, if you're on LinkedIn, or what platform you're on, but I would love for you to introduce yourself. Be a part of this conversation. In fact, if you do, then we've got some new tools over here. I may try to actually respond to you in text form live. We'll see if it works, though. And then if you want to get a hold of us to talk about anything, you want to give us a little feedback, you've got an idea for a show, well, I'll tell you what. Just send us an email over at solve@rackspace.com. I would love to get your email. I've gotten a few over the months and years that we've done this. Got to tell you, not a whole lot, but I would love for you to do it. All right, looks like we are getting some responses. Let's push this button right here. You ready for it? Here we go. I'm pushing a button. Boom! Now you can see my chat. And I'm going to write good morning all. Let's see. Hopefully that's all streaming through. It might even show up as me. No, it just shows up as Restream. That's the tool we use around here. It's called Restream.io if you're ever looking for a streaming technology. So check that out. Everyone, keep your comments coming in. Syracuse, New York. Brent, did you know I grew up in Saugerties, New York? Granted, not very close, but still part of the same state. So everyone, welcome up. Steve from San Antonio is here. We have Fort Myers, Florida in the house. Who else do we have? Maryland is here. Huge showing from the U.S., which I love. Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for bringing that up here as well. Qatar is here. Thank you so much for being here, part of the show. Guys, it's going to be a really interesting one. But before we get into all of those details, let's look at what else is happening around the program. So I would love for you, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast. Now, the podcast, you say, Jeff, what's the difference between the live stream and the podcast? Well, I'll tell you, there's two things. First of all of the audio from these events shows up down there in the podcast. So if you miss an episode, you can still get all of the content. But also, we produce unique and original content for the podcast only. So the only way to get that, of course, is to subscribe or to set alarms to go look if there's a new episode. No one wants to do that. In fact, the current episode that's out there, if you want to go check it out, it was from earlier this year. I had our CTO, Srini Kaushak, was on, and we talked all about sustainability. It was the Earth Day episode. So I'd love for you to go check that out as well. Who else? We got Boston here. Toronto is here. We have Ohio. I hear it's cooler in Ohio. My wife is a good friend up there. They've been chatting. India is here. Fantastic. Look at all these folks in the room. Houston, Michael from Houston. Michael, I'm sending you a Cloud Talk t-shirt. Well, if I had one, I'd send it to you. Everyone, I also want to call out what's new over in Solve. In fact, Daniel's going to bring up a little QR code, but if you've heard of the phrase or the word Copilot, well, it has to do, of course, with AI. Specifically, Microsoft is utilizing it, and you'll find it elsewhere in the ecosystem as well. But ultimately, what we're talking about here is how we take AI and we use it to help us get our job done. Now, Microsoft has baked their AI technology, the ChatGPT in whatever version it is in, and sorry, I got distracted by somebody talking about SpaceX in the chat. That's really cool. So Macy, thank you for that. Engine SpaceX, it gets loud. That's so cool. Why can you hear those engines, Macy? I have to know. So let me know. Oh, all right. Pennsylvania. All right. So we're talking about Jeff Hacks here. Very all over the fact here place today. So New York, grew up in upstate New York, but was born southeastern Pennsylvania. So I can see Pennsylvania's in the house. Brian, thank you for being here. All right, so back to Copilots, everybody. Go check out this article. The QR code's there on the screen. Love for you to go check it out. It has to do with Copilots and how in the use in AI, Microsoft, I was mentioning how that's getting baked into everything that they do, that it can help you get your job done better, faster, easier. So go check it out. All right, with that, everyone, let's get into the conversation. Now, I spent last week, a good part of last week up in Dallas at an event with one of our most cherished partners, Telarus. And Telarus did their annual summit up in the Dallas area in McKinney. Not McKinney, where was it? Somewhere up in Dallas. Dallas is big. And it was a great event. They had some amazing speakers. I got to get up and talk on stage at one point with my now good friend, Koby Phillips. So you can go check them out. There he is. There's his picture. Not I said his name wrong when we got on stage, and it became a whole joke. So let's get Koby up here, and we'll get into our event. So Koby, welcome to the program.
Hello, good to be here.
Glad to have you here. So, and also thanks for getting up early. You're a West Coaster. In fact, we pushed our time back just a little to make it somewhat more palatable for you.
I very much appreciate that. Yes. Not much of a morning person, so we'll see how good I do today.
There you go. So far, hey, you're off to a great start. You know, you haven't said my name wrong, and I said your name wrong on stage. Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick background of that story.
You should.
Right as before we kicked off, we were co-presenting, and Jeff goes, I double checked the pronunciation of his last name, and he goes, "Man, it'd be hilarious if you're like, oh, my good friend Jeff then said my name wrong." And not less than 30 seconds later, he goes,
30 seconds later, I'm saying, "Hey, Corey, nice to see you.
Great to be here." So we were able to make it a joke, and I think I did that to you, though. I think I put it into your head, I set you up for failure. So my apologies.
It's something like that. Yeah, let's blame you. I like that better. That's awesome.
Well, if you can't tell from the West Coast, I just made that whole thing that you did wrong my fault. So the passive aggressiveness really comes out.
That's really good. That's really good. I love it. Thank you so much for that. Hey, so Casey, was it Casey? Where did she go? She did say she's down on Padre Island, and they test those SpaceX rockets, and she can hear it across the bay. How cool is that? SpaceX.
Well, being in Seattle, I go by the buildings quite often.
Do you really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. All right. So, hey, Todd Catlett's watching us this morning. We know Todd. Todd, welcome to the program. So Todd is very familiar with what a technology, TSD, Technology Solution Distributor. That's what Telarus is, correct?
That is correct.
So what is that? I thought the whole world does not know. In fact, it took me a little while to figure it out.
You know, it's an interesting spot in the technology ecosystem. We essentially support a ton of different style of consultants, right? It can be independent brokers all the way through disties and all the companies that everybody's familiar with from logos standpoints. Everybody is starting to really push into this reoccurring revenue model. And that's the space we've been playing in for about 20 years. And we started off as a really traditional telco place, right? You're now Lumen, Comcast, et cetera, selling, we have partners that came out of that space selling circuits. But what we've seen over the last 5 to 7 years is this evolution of technology that's available in our space, therefore attracting new people to it. And we're in the thousands of independent brokers, and I call them independent brokers. And like, again, they can be companies, there can be hundreds of people or a single individual. And essentially what we do is we represent about 400 suppliers, Rackspace being one of our crown jewels in the cloud and security space, right? And what that does is it gives them access to it. Now, the interesting part is we don't pay for anything. We simply put everything together. We gather a monthly commission, and then a majority of that goes through to the independent broker. But we put up a lot of resources to help support that. So on our staff, we have 20 engineers, right?
Wow.
We're about a 350, 400 person company. We have 20 engineers, and we're growing that space. Out of those engineers, the expertise level is pretty dense. We have 4 CISSPs on staff. And all of these resources are just available for our partners to be able to come in and utilize, and that are customer facing. So it's a consultancy shop that also helps distribute. It's a little bit of everything for the technology community. And like I said, it's one place that we can see everything in a customer's environment, from a cable circuit all the way through a Kubernetes environment, right? Yeah. So and everything in between. So it's a really unique spot, but it's growing like crazy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because a lot of folks, as I look at the demographics of the folks who will watch this program, we have, from a geographical point of view, tons in the Texas area. Of course, we're central to that. Lots in Europe, but then a huge group that show up from India. We have a great showing in India. But as I look at the types of people who are coming in, they tend to be, by and large, we will see a significant population who are sales folks who are out there. You talk about them as being the folks that you're working with. I mean, it's people who have relationships out there who are representing technology that they are brokering in some form or fashion. Now, in the old days, your business, your world tended to be focused more on the connectivity side, circuits, things of that nature. And we were talking before we went live here about how your big summits tended to have some information, but then some community building events, mountain biking. You went and did them all. It's all kinds of crazy stuff. But all of that's been cut out, generally speaking, at the broker's bequest to get more education, because the market is maturing and getting more. There's more and more things that people can do and more that they can represent. So I think that's very well illustrated by the fact that, I mean, you mentioned what, 20 some engineers and the like who work with you and your team to help design, to architect some of these solutions and connect suppliers, people like a Rackspace, to the brokers.
Yeah, and if you look at the broader community, right? So we have our engineers that are connecting into then say the Rackspace and all of your engineers, and the ability for our brokers, our partners to problem solve for their customers is at an all-time high. And they want to understand everything that's available for them. And so you see this sophistication level start to rise as the channel's grown, and you start to see the production. One of the things that I love about our channel is we produce more new logos for our suppliers than any other means, most of the time, right? So going back to those relationships, you have customers now with resource drain being an issue, like just can't find they're going out to our teams, our partners, and saying, help me find resources and solutions for things far more than they ever have. And so then they're stretching into, what can we solve for everybody? So it's a really great community. It's, like I said, it's growing, and as we offer more technology, we see more and more sophisticated products come to bear for their customers, and it's a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah. So speaking of sophisticated products, what are some of the things that you're seeing requests for that maybe you didn't see this time last year?
A lot of containerization still. As what you start to see in our channel is, as we're not what I would call a bleeding edge channel, right? We're not going to be on the forefront of technology, but as that technology starts to be more and more consumer based, you see this apex of like where we meet. As the demand comes up, as the customers catch up to that learning curve themselves, that's where we start to see an impact. So if it comes out, my golden rule is, if we see something hit about 18 to 24 months later, it's going to start to really make headway into our channel with our partners and their customers in conversation. So we're seeing a lot around Kubernetes as a service, as that's becoming more and more paramount for customers, a part of a bigger modernization product. That's really what we're seeing. The inside of it all looks a little different per customer, as I'm sure everybody's aware. But it's, hey, we made our migrations, but we're not where we need to be. What else can we do? What can we do better? How can we be more efficient? And we're having a lot of those conversations with customers.
That's interesting, because it tracks very much with the technology adoption curve. If you think about the bell, the new bleeding edge stuff comes out. Just a few people are really, they're making some headlines with it. They're doing some things with it, but it does take that 18 months or so for things to really start to move at a more significant level. Make sure that when there's no issues, there's no technical issues, security. Of course, there's always security issues with everything in the cyber world. But what I think is interesting is now there's some proven use cases that somebody can say, your fancy Kubernetes stuff, now I can see how that's going to save me money, make me more efficient as an organization. How do I actually adopt that?
There's a couple of things to that, right? What do you do when you're on the bleeding edge? You bleed. And whenever you're a relationship-based organization, and that's your brick and mortar, is the relationship you have, you can't risk that with the technology that could be detrimental to a company. So it's really it's a monitoring, this is ready for mass consumption type of environment. And we see a lot of success once we get to that point.
Yeah. Hey, Isaiah asked a really interesting question, and he's talking about, we've seen a bunch of layoffs. What out in the general world, what can the job market for cloud technologies, what does it look like these days? So, I think that's a really good one for you, Koby, because you're out there in the middle of it. See, now it's just stuck in my head.
We'll give you three. So we're down.
I'm ruined. There's two. There's two.
I would say we're seeing, so that is where a lot of our success is coming, because what ends up happening, it's not so much the layoffs that I've been seeing
Yeah.
it's actually the opposite. It's not being able to have the right resources. And in that small enterprise mid-market in particularly, we're seeing more and more companies turn to, MSPs and CSPs to come in and do a lot of things for them that they were doing in-house, right? And it becomes a staffing issue. You start to see an arms race from the big three, AWS, Microsoft, and Google, and they are, their salaries have increased for a lot of key engineers and things like that. And so there's a stat floating in my head right now, and I can't remember who to attribute to, but it's like what $1.3 trillion more being spent in an MSP environment, third parties, than in last year for IT is the expectation, because of the outsourcing. And again, it's companies that are recognizing the difference between managing in-house teams and managing to contracts with suppliers, right? And there's a different skill set there, but as you come through and you're able to really hone in on that, it can be much more effective, or proven argumentatively much more effective, to bring in a supplier and manage that way. So we're seeing an increase in what we do, like, with companies like Rackspace. Like, companies are now turning to you guys, I would assume more, Jeff, and you can answer this. Help us more than you ever have, because stuff that we used to do in-house, we don't have the ability to staff anymore for one reason or another. Are you seeing?
Right. Yeah, we're seeing it driven through two primary things. The first is they're wanting to do more with what they already have. They're trying to be more efficient with it. So, they're looking for ways to augment the capabilities they already have. But then second to it is with all the new technologies that are coming out, and that's specific, I'll call out AI, which we can get into a little bit. I know that's part of the topic of the day. There are technologies that companies want to adopt that they just don't have the people for, and in some cases, it's not proven for them. In other words, they haven't been able to prove it for themselves, so they're not ready to go invest in a couple dozen data scientists and the folks that it takes to make some of this stuff happen. So they're looking for supplier companies, partner companies like Rackspace to be able to come in and do that work for them. So are you seeing many requests these days when we think about AI, and what does that look like on your side?
So we are. So I have a counterpart that handles our customer experience, right? So I'm our VP of Cloud Managed Services here. We have a CX team in Shane Speakman and Samantha Nelson that kind of collaborate, no pun intended, because of the collaboration side of that. But what they're seeing is that's really where we're seeing it happen, kind of in that contact center, call center space, how it's affecting your agents and how it's helping replace some of those, areas of the stack of employees that are a little bit on the lower end, where it's helping automate a lot of that, right? And we're seeing a ton of AI hit that. And what we'll start to see it do is, I believe AI is going to start to trickle into a lot of those lower areas where it's taking some of the mundane task off of the human element and taking it over and doing it through AI, right? And then as we trust the technology more, it'll start to move up stack and start to do some interesting things. And but I'm thinking we're a few years out on that. But it's again the human trust factor of utilizing the technology. It's there now, right? We've all seen examples of it, but it's like, well, do I trust it to do and run what all of these things are? But so we're seeing the biggest impact, to go back to your question, really happen in that customer experience profile, right? We are seeing more and more conversations around improving data lake analytics and getting all of that kind of stuff to a piece to where it's informational to be used, but we're just on the tipping point of that.
Right. And I think, when we think about utilizing it initially in a CX, a customer experience environment, if we extrapolate that a little couple clicks farther, then what that really means is, in those tools that are strong in customer experience, they are utilizing AI to help make that a stronger, more better, to use proper English, experience. And And I think that that speaks to a common path when we look at ways with people who are maybe leaving their data center, with air quotes, for some of their applications, thinking about how to move them to cloud. Our first recommendation generally is to think about a SaaS-based offering when making that type of a move. Because if SaaS can handle the application and the infrastructure and the management and the bandwidth of all of that stuff, well, God bless them, let them do it. But if your applications require more customization, then that's when we have to get into the nuts and bolts. So when we think about AI, CX is a great place for that. The Copilot article I mentioned earlier, Copilot technologies like from Microsoft, is a great way to do it. In and around the work you're already doing, how do you work more efficiently? Because that gets back to what I said before, and what I think drives a lot of cases, the technology adoption curve. Think about the bell shape. And it gets back to tangible examples, either seeing other people do it or utilizing it in other ways and safe and small ways inside of your organization. And then that lights off some light bulbs. Hey, if I can ask, my Copilot Clippy inside of Word to actually now write my paragraph for me based on a few bullets, well, why couldn't I do that against my ask questions of my sales data? Why couldn't I ask questions about my partner contracts, customer contracts, things like that? And so that's when you start to see real tangible custom use cases for AI starting to show up. Now, I do want to call out really quick. Where did it go? Tarun, I hope I'm saying your name right. Daniel, if we could bring his comment up. He says, how are we tracking the issues with bias and security, and even questions about the models? These are real concerns. In fact, we've set up a model inside of our own offering here at Rackspace around, we call it responsible AI, but everything that we're doing, that responsible AI drives back to three primary core tenets, and that is it needs to be sustainable, it needs to be secure, and needs to be symbiotic. We're not symbiotic, meaning we're not looking to replace people. We're looking to how do we make people stronger, better, faster at what they do.
Yeah, and I think what I love about the introduction of any really cool new technology, right? And you go through. I feel like these are the stages of how this rolls out. Somebody creates something, we look at it, and we go, "That's really cool." Then we sit on that for a hot second, and then we start to go, well, what can we use it for? How can we go from this looks cool to it can be productive and efficient, or make us better? And then we go, how do we tear it apart from every angle? Meaning, what are the security risks? What are the things that it could lead to? And I think that's where a lot of us are at with AI right now, is that tearing it apart in a good way. And I think these are all responsible ways to look at it. From a security thing, one of the biggest things, I was watching a different panel, and they were talking about AI and security, right? And they said, well, what are the biggest security risks of AI? And they're like, well, that we depend on AI to then combat or to police AI. That's the biggest risk. So like, that's one of the biggest areas is you start to see AI and what it's doing in cybersecurity and things like that. But then you got to look and go, well, who's watching the AI and all of that? So I believe for like every other part of technology, this will end up replacing some jobs, right?
Yes.
It'll do some things while creating new jobs, because you have to have specialization and understanding it and working it. Now, it might be a 5-to-1 differentiator, but it's still going to create something out of it, because there's still going to have to be that element of somebody to watch what's going on.
Agreed. And unfortunately, one of the comments in here, I can't see who actually said it, but he says, I think it's also impacted by partner relationships. There's still gaps in knowledge with MSPs to support partners. It's a risk of using an inexperienced MSP. And that drives me towards a question. It's from Angel. Thank you, Megan. Producer Megan in the chat, private chat. That's right. To the rescue. So Koby, but that brings up the question, you oversee, you're VP of all the cloud things, all the engineers fall into that. And these are the engineers who are helping to not only architect solutions, but as these you call them partners, call in with, I've got this opportunity, I'm trying to figure it out. What's the right solution? What's the right supplier meaning the technology MSP. How do you guys, and I'm not baiting how you say nice things to Rackspace, but how do you go about choosing, a supplier you think is going to be able to best serve that need?
We developed, and luckily the engineers are not reporting to me. We have a great leader in our engineering department, Josh LaPresta. So lucky for those guys.
Josh, that's right.
I have the best job ever, a VP with no actual direct reports. So I love. Yep, exactly. And so But to go back to answer the question is, we do what we call conceptual architecture. So we sit down and we go into an environment with a customer, and we the nice part about having all of the relationships we have, it's a clear whiteboard, meaning we don't have an edict to go and sell a product that's within our portfolio, because every product is within our portfolio. We have access to everything. So we start with solving the customer's needs, and really it starts with that business conversation that drives into go, what are you looking to do? And then we start to put the technology into it. And by the time that we're done, it really starts to get so dialed in that we go, this is a great fit for X, right? And if
Right.
it's this area, then there might be 2 or 3, and we walk, we present the opportunity to both. We go through, the proper channels of deal registration, so on and so forth. And then we have a deep dive conversation. So by that point in time, we're so far ahead of where the customer would be if they're having to start over 2 or 3 times and re-explain everything. So it really helps streamline their process. And it starts to be a pretty clear picture of who makes the most sense, because the technology represents the answer, right? And the capabilities of the supplier. And what we're also seeing is it could be multiple answers, meaning one supplier is going to take this piece of it, and this one's going to be this. And that's where that partner understanding the customer and helping them and manage that ecosystem of technology becomes really impactful. It's very, in Rackspace, you guys have the deepest, and this isn't because I'm on the show, you guys do have the deepest bench of products and technology, but there's still areas that you guys don't do, right? And so we'll pair you up with someone that can take this part of it, and you guys will handle this piece of it. And so it completes or presents a complete picture for the customer.
Got it. Awesome. Well, by the way, it looks like, Driss, you've got a friend in Seattle up there, Koby. So I just thought I would,
Nice.
Your fan is here. All right. Very good. Well, we are coming up to the top of the hour. But I do have one last question for you. As you are, you're a technologist, you're VP of the cloud stuffs. And so as we think about our conversation around AI, my favorite question to ask people about that is, how are you personally utilizing AI to do the things that you do?
Man, I do a lot of stuff. Right now, I'm working on trying to get it where I no longer have to manage my calendar at all. That's the bane of my existence. And if I can teach it how to do my expense reports with as much as I travel. So I'm actually looking into a couple of those things that it works out. It does to a degree, right? Like we have a program, I just throw the receipt in, it scans it, does that. It's pretty minimal AI at that point. But then it knows, now it's starting to understand where to catalog it, where to go, where things. So I'm looking for things, I like to call it life as a service.
Make life easier.
Yeah, I'm looking to implement AI in as many components of my life as possible.
I love it. All right. So if people want to follow you, you're on the LinkedIn, anywhere, anything else, places people can come to find you?
Nope, I think I'll stick to LinkedIn at this point. Any of the other places aren't.
Keep that MySpace account private for now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody. Koby, thank you so much for being a part of the program, getting up early with us here today. And folks, we are back next week, but not on Tuesday. I know it's confusing you, but I've got a little travel that's going to have me on a plane when I normally would do this program. So next week, we have Rebecca Potts, and she is from Google. This is the month of Google, by the way. You're going to find a lot of content from us as we head this road down towards Google Next. If you're going to be there, let me know. I'd love for you to send me a note, and we could connect when we're out there in San Francisco at the end of the month. But Rebecca Potts is going to be here next week. She's from Google, but that's on Thursday. We're going to have that chat on Thursday. Just watch for the LinkedIn invitation. Follow us there. Thanks, Tarun, for being a part of the program and saying thank you to us. That's always appreciated. All right, is there anything else that I need to show you guys before we head off? I don't think so. Let's bring up the deck, because with that, I think we are off. Oh, hey, by the way, Google Next. Thank you, Megan, for posting this. If you're going to be there, we're at booth 217. I'd love for you to come and check us out there. Also, if you want to check out that article that we talked about earlier about copilots, you can find that over at rackspace.com/solve, or I can leave a little bit of dead space right here for you to bring up that QR code one more time, Daniel, if people want to go find that article. There's all kinds of great information over there, folks. I'd encourage you to go and check it out. But until next time, my friends. It's the ending music. It must mean the end of this week's program. Don't forget to go subscribe to the Cloud Talk podcast. You can find it anywhere that podcasts are found. And until next week, that is next Thursday, the 17th. I'll be back with Rebecca Potts from the road.